You found the house. Not the house you needed, the house you wanted. 4 bedrooms instead of 3. A dining room that seats 12 for the 4 times a year you host more than 6 people. A basement that will definitely become a home gym and almost certainly becomes a storage room. A yard the kids will love until they're teenagers and stop going outside. A neighborhood that feels like the version of your life you've been working toward, which is exactly the feeling the listing was designed to produce and exactly the feeling that costs the most money per square foot. The mortgage payment is $600 more per month than the smaller house 2 miles away that also has everything you actually need. But the bigger house feels right. It feels earned. It feels like the logical next step in a life that's been moving in the right direction. Here's what that $600 per month actually is. It is $7,200 per year. It is $216,000 over 30 years before interest. It is invested at historical market returns of 7% annually over that same 30 years, approximately $680,000 in foregone wealth, from one real estate decision made once on the feeling that the bigger house was the logical next step. That is not a small number. That is a retirement account. That is the financial gap between 2 households with identical incomes, identical savings rates, and one different house decision, measured 30 years later when the gap is no longer theoretical. My name is William, and today we're going through exactly why the bigger house is the most reliably wealth-destroying decision available to the average American household. Not because home ownership is wrong, but because the specific psychology of house sizing decisions consistently produces outcomes that the financial reality underneath them doesn't support. First, the true cost of the bigger house, the number nobody calculates before signing. The mortgage payment is the number everyone focuses on. It is the smallest component of the true cost differential between a house that fits your life and a house that performs your life. Take 2 houses. House A, $380,000, 3 bedrooms, everything you functionally need. Mortgage payment at 6.8% with 20% down, $1,985 per month. House B, $480,000, 4 bedrooms, the dining room, the basement, the yard. Mortgage payment at the same rate, $2,508 per month. Monthly payment differential, $523. That $523 is what the comparison looks like through the mortgage payment frame, the frame the industry uses because it is the frame that makes the expensive decision feel most manageable. Here is the comparison through the true cost frame. Property taxes at 1.1% effective rate. House A generates $4,180 annually. House B generates $5,280 annually. Additional annual cost, $1,100. Homeowners insurance scales with replacement value. House B costs approximately $300 to $500 more annually to insure. Maintenance at 1% of home value annually. House A requires $3,800. House B requires $4,800. Additional annual maintenance, $1,000. Utilities, heating, cooling, and electricity scale with square footage. A larger home costs approximately $150 to $300 more monthly, depending on climate and construction. Call it $200 per month, $2,400 annually. Total true annual cost differential between House A and House B. Mortgage differential, $6,266, plus property tax, $1,100, plus insurance, $400, plus maintenance, $1,000, plus utilities, $2,400 equals approximately $11,176 per year. Not $523 per month, $931 per month. $11,176 per year. $335,280 over 30 years in direct additional spending, before opportunity cost, before the compounding that $931 per month could have produced if it had gone somewhere else. Invested at 7% annual returns over 30 years, $931 per month produces approximately $1,130,000. The bigger house doesn't just cost more to own, it costs you $1 million in foregone wealth over the ownership period. That number needs to be in the room when you're standing in the dining room that seats 12, imagining the 4 dinner parties per year that will happen in it.
The psychology that makes the bigger house feel necessary, and why it's almost always wrong. The house sizing decision is almost never made on the basis of functional need. It is made on the basis of 3 psychological mechanisms that the real estate industry understands and the buyer almost never examines. The first is the reference group effect. Your friends, colleagues, and neighbors in a certain income bracket live in houses of a certain size, and the social comparison mechanism that runs continuously in the background of human consciousness registers deviation from that norm as a deficiency rather than a choice. The 3-bedroom house feels small, not because it is too small for your life, but because it is smaller than what your reference group occupies. The feeling of smallness is not about square footage, it is about social positioning. And social positioning is an extraordinarily expensive thing to purchase in square footage. The second is future-proofing rationalization. We'll grow into it. The kids will need their own rooms, we might work from home, we might need a guest room. We'll definitely use the basement. Every one of these rationalizations is possible, and none of them has been tested against the actual pattern of how you live. The guest room gets used 6 nights per year. The office becomes a second closet. The basement collects the exercise equipment from the phase when you were going to get serious about fitness. The house was sized for a future self that partly materialized and mostly didn't, and the cost of the space that future self never used compounds for 30 years, regardless. The third is the arrival fallacy, the belief that the bigger house will produce the feeling of having arrived at the life you've been working toward. It does produce that feeling for approximately 4 to 6 weeks. Then the house becomes the baseline, the standard, the thing you have, not the thing you wanted, and the feeling that was supposed to arrive with it relocates to whatever comes next, a renovation, a pool, a different neighborhood, while the mortgage that funded the original arrival continues to clear from the account every month.
What the space you're buying actually gets used for, the honest version. A 2021 study by UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives of Families found that American families use approximately 40% of their home's square footage regularly. The remaining 60% is cleaned, heated, cooled, insured, maintained, and mortgaged, but not meaningfully inhabited. The formal dining room is used for dinner parties that happen less frequently than the house-buying conversation assumed. The guest bedroom houses guests for an average of 11 nights per year in most American households. The bonus room becomes the room where things go that don't have another place to go. The basement becomes the most expensive storage unit in the zip code. The house is sized for the aspirational version of daily life. The actual daily life, the mornings, the evenings, the ordinary Tuesday that constitutes the vast majority of the time spent in the building, occupies the kitchen, 1 or 2 bedrooms, and whatever room the television is in. The rest is overhead. This is not an argument against having space that serves genuine purposes in your life. It is an argument against paying for aspirational space at the mortgage rate, the maintenance rate, the utility rate, and the insurance rate for 30 years, while the money that paid for it fails to compound anywhere more useful. The opportunity cost math, the number that reframes everything. Every dollar that goes to the bigger house payment is a dollar not going to the investment account. This is obvious. What is not obvious is the magnitude of the compounding differential over a 30-year mortgage term. The household that buys House A and invests the $931 monthly differential in a total market index fund at 7% annual returns arrives at year 30 with approximately $1,130,000 in additional invested wealth beyond whatever the house itself is worth. The household that chose House B has a larger house, which is also appreciated at the same rate as House A in the same market because houses in the same market appreciate at roughly the same percentage rate regardless of their starting price. The appreciation differential between a $380,000 house and a $480,000 house over 30 years at 3% annual appreciation is approximately $73,000. The household that chose House A is ahead by approximately $1,057,000 after accounting for the appreciation advantage of House B, from one decision made once on the feeling that the bigger house was the logical next step.
The specific framework for making this decision correctly. Before committing to any house above the minimum that functionally serves your current life, not your aspirational future life, your current life, run one calculation. Take the monthly payment differential between the house you're considering and the house that meets your functional needs. Multiply it by 1.78 to account for the full true cost differential, including taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. Multiply that monthly figure by 360. Then calculate what that monthly amount invested at 7% annual returns produces over 30 years. That number is the real price of the bigger house, not the purchase price, not the monthly payment, the opportunity cost of the capital deployed to additional square footage over the ownership period. If that number is acceptable to you, if the additional space genuinely serves your life in ways that justify the foregone wealth, buy the bigger house with full information. Some people have that calculation and decide the space is worth it. That is a legitimate decision made with the full picture visible. The problem is that almost nobody makes this decision with the full picture visible. They make it with the monthly payment visible and the $1 million invisible. And the $1 million stays invisible for 30 years until the retirement account is smaller than it should be, and the explanation for the gap is sitting in the dining room that seats 12. The bigger house costs more than the payment. It costs more than you'll ever add up while you're living in it. Subscribe for a new video every week, and drop in the comments how much house you bought versus how much house you actually needed. The gap in those two numbers is the conversation worth having.